The morning fog clung to the treetops at Lakewood National Park as Deputy Sheriff Carl Wilson's cruiser bumped along the gravel road. The radio crackled with static as the dispatcher's voice cut through the silence, her words measured but urgent. 3 teenagers found dead at campsite 4. 1 survivor. Carl's knuckles whitened against the steering wheel. In 20 years on the force in this quiet Oregon community, he'd never handled anything worse than drunk driving or petty theft. As he pulled into the clearing, the mist parted to reveal 3 ambulances, their red and blue lights painting the trees in an eerie glow. "Jesus," he whispered, seeing the yellow police tape strung between pines, marking off a small campsite. Sheriff Layton met him at the perimeter, his weathered face ashen. "It's bad, Carl. Real bad." Beyond the tape, a blue tent lay partially collapsed, its fabric torn and stained dark with what Carl immediately recognized as blood. Too much blood. "The victims?" Carl asked, his throat tight. "Local kids. 3 dead, Michael Barnes, 17, Lisa Hawkins, 17, and Tyler Johnson, 18. Beaten beyond recognition." Layton's voice cracked. "The survivor, Dean Sutter, also 18, is being transported to County General. He's in shock, jaw broken. EMT says he was mumbling something about being attacked in the night." Carl stepped carefully into the cordoned area, the scent of pine needles mingling with the metallic tang of blood. Inside the tent, sleeping bags lay in disarray, spattered with crimson. A flashlight rolled beneath a backpack, its beam still weakly illuminating the canvas wall. A portable radio sat silent on a corner tarp. For teenagers out for a weekend of camping. Now 3 body bags waited nearby. "Weapon?" Carl asked, scanning the ground. "Not found. Methinks something blunt and heavy. Maybe multiple weapons." Carl knelt to examine a partial footprint in the soft earth near the tent entrance. "Any signs of robbery?" "Wallets intact. Lisa's jewelry untouched. Dean's car keys still in his jacket." As crime scene technicians photographed and collected evidence, Carl moved through the surrounding forest in widening circles, searching for anything out of place. Finding nothing but wilderness, he returned to watch them load the bodies into the ambulances. "Random act?" he asked Layton quietly. The sheriff shook his head. "Nothing's random, Carl. We just don't know the pattern yet." County General Hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear. Dean Sutter lay in the hospital bed, his jaw wired shut, eyes wide and haunted. Bandages covered the left side of his face, and IVs snaked from his arms to hanging bags of fluid. "Dean," Carl said gently, pulling a chair to the bedside. "I'm Deputy Wilson. When you're ready, I need to hear what happened." The boy's parents stood anxiously in the doorway, his father stoic, mother weeping softly into a handkerchief. The doctor had provided Dean with a notepad and pen. With trembling hands, he scrawled, "Someone attacked us. Did you see who?" "Dark. Woke up to screaming. Something hit me." "What time was this?" "Don't know. Late. Everyone was asleep." "How many attackers?" "Couldn't see. Maybe 1. Strong." Carl noticed Dean's averted gaze, the way his fingers clenched the pen. "Is there anything else you remember? Any detail at all?" Dean hesitated, then wrote, "Just screams." Then nothing. As Carl left the room, Dean's father followed him into the hallway. "My boy wouldn't hurt a fly," he insisted, voice low and urgent. "They've been friends since elementary school." "I'm just gathering information, Mr. Sutter," Carl assured him, though something about Dean's account wasn't sitting right. People who survived trauma often had gaps in memory, but there was something in the boy's eyes, fear, yes, but something else too. Back at the station, the forensic reports began trickling in. The attack had occurred between 2 and 4 a.m. The murder weapon remained unidentified. No fingerprints except those belonging to the victims. No foreign DNA under the victim's fingernails, suggesting they hadn't fought back, or had been killed in their sleep. And most puzzling, despite the savagery of the attack, there were no signs of forced entry into the campsite or the tent. "It's like the killer materialized out of thin air," Layton muttered, staring at the photos pinned to the corkboard. Carl studied the timeline. Or was already there. 3 days later, Dean Sutter was released from the hospital. The funerals for his friends were held on consecutive days, the entire town in attendance. Carl watched from a distance as Dean, jaw still wired shut, placed flowers on Lisa Hawkins' casket, his parents supporting him on either side. The community rallied around the Sutters, bringing casseroles and offering prayers. Meanwhile, inconsistencies in Dean's story began to surface. Ranger Thompson, who patrolled the park that night, reported hearing a car start around 1:30 a.m. near the campground. Yet Dean had claimed they were all asleep when the attack occurred. The medical examiner found defensive wounds on Michael's and Tyler's hands, suggesting they'd been conscious during the attack, contradicting Dean's claim they were killed in their sleep. Most damning, Lisa's diary, found in her bedroom at home, mentioned a growing tension between Dean and Tyler over her affections. "We need to interview him again," Carl told Layton. This time, they questioned Dean at the station, his parents and their attorney present. "Dean," Carl began, "the ranger heard a car around 1:30 a.m. Was that one of you?" Dean wrote, "Went for more firewood. Everyone was still awake then. But you told me everyone was asleep when the attack happened." "I meant later. After I got back." Carl laid out photos of the victims. "Michael and Tyler have defensive wounds. They fought back, Dean. They weren't asleep." Dean stared at the photos, tears welling. "I don't remember clearly. It was dark." "Did you and Tyler argue that night? About Lisa perhaps?" Dean's attorney intervened. "My client has been through a traumatic experience. His memory is fragmented." But Carl had seen the flash in Dean's eyes before the attorney spoke. Recognition, then fear. Outside the interrogation room, Layton sighed. "Not enough to hold him." "He's lying about something," Carl insisted. "Lying doesn't make him a killer." The investigation continued. Every student at Lakewood High was interviewed. Teachers, rangers, even local drifters were questioned. No substantial leads emerged. The murder weapons, determined to be a hunting knife and a hammer, were never found, despite dredging the lake and combing the surrounding forest. As weeks turned to months, the case grew cold. Dean Sutter recovered physically, graduated high school a semester late, and left town for college in California. Carl kept the case files in his desk drawer, reviewing them periodically, certain they'd missed something. Years passed. Carl made detective, then retired. Layton died of heart failure. New officers filled the station, and the Lakewood campsite killings became a dark chapter in local history, a cautionary tale parents told teenage campers. Until 2003, when Carl, now 68 and widowed, received a call from Detective Lorna Hayes, the young officer who'd inherited his cold cases. "We've reopened the Sutter case," she told him, voice crackling over the phone line. "Dean Sutter?" Carl sat up in his recliner, arthritis forgotten. "Why?" "He's in rehab in Portland. Apparently told his roommate some things. The roommate called us." Carl met Hayes at the station the next day, his old badge a visitor pass now. She pulled the dusty evidence boxes from storage. "Dean's roommate claims he confessed during a night of withdrawal," Hayes explained. "Said Dean talked about what he did to those kids at Lakewood and how the knife went in so easily." "Hearsay from an addict," Carl cautioned, though his pulse quickened. "There's more. We re-examined the original evidence with new technology. Found partial prints on Lisa's charm bracelet that weren't catalogued before. They match Dean. His prints would be there anyway. They were friends. On the inside of the clasp." Carl conceded the point. And, Hayes continued, we recovered a journal Dean kept in college. It contains poems about silencing those who betrayed me and blood under moonlight. They built the case methodically. Dean's college roommates described his nightmares, his obsession with true crime, his volatile relationships. Former girlfriends spoke of jealous rages. His therapist's notes, subpoenaed after lengthy court battles, revealed discussions of overwhelming guilt about his past. In 2005, 45 years after the murders, Dean Sutter was arrested at his small apartment in Seattle, where he worked as an accountant. The trial became a media sensation, picking apart the life of the now 63-year-old man who'd survived a teenage massacre only to be accused of perpetrating it. Carl attended every day of the proceedings, watching Dean, gray-haired, shoulders hunched, as the prosecution laid out their case, jealousy over Lisa's attention to Tyler, Dean's history of suppressed rage, the suspicious gaps in his story, the damning statements to his rehab roommate. The defense countered with Dean's clean record since that night. No violent incidents. A quiet life. They questioned the reliability of memories decades old and the testimony of a fellow addict seeking leniency in his own legal troubles. When the DNA results from the preserved evidence came back, the courtroom fell silent. Blood found on a torn piece of Dean's shirt did not match his DNA profile. If not Dean's blood, his attorney argued, then whose? The real killer remains at large. After 7 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days before returning a verdict, not guilty. Dean left the courthouse a free man, but not an exonerated one. In the court of public opinion, questions lingered. He disappeared from public view, reportedly changing his name and moving abroad. 2 years later, Carl sat at his kitchen table with Detective Hayes, reviewing the case yet again. I spoke with the Park Service, Hayes said. They're demolishing the old ranger station next month. The ranger who was on duty that night, Thompson, he died last year. Thompson, Carl murmured. Something about his statement always bothered me. He flipped through his notes. Thompson reported hearing a car at 1:30 a.m., but the campground was a 20-minute hike from the nearest road. Hayes frowned. So how did he hear it? Exactly. And why mention it specifically? Carl tapped his pen against the paper. Thompson was new that summer. No local connections. Left the service 6 months after the murders. They pulled Thompson's personnel file. Born in Idaho. No prior criminal record. But upon further digging, they discovered he'd worked at parks in California and Washington during periods when similar unsolved attacks occurred. Jesus, Hayes whispered. Could it be? They tracked Thompson's movements over the decades. He'd moved frequently, working seasonal jobs at national parks across the western states. In 3 locations, unsolved murders had occurred within his tenure, all young people, all in remote areas. But Thompson was dead now, beyond questioning, beyond justice. And the evidence was circumstantial at best. We'll never know for certain, Hayes said, closing the file. Carl wasn't so sure. He drove to the cemetery where Thompson was buried, standing over the simple grave marker. What had the man seen, or done, that night in 1960? Had Dean been covering for him somehow? Or was this just another false lead in a case defined by its persistent mysteries? On a crisp autumn day in 2010, 50 years after the murders, Carl received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a tattered journal, its pages yellowed with age. A note attached read, "Found this while cleaning out my father's attic. Thought you should have it." The journal belonged to Charles Thompson, the park ranger. With trembling hands, Carl read the entries, which detailed Thompson's growing obsession with the teenage campers, particularly Lisa. His anger when he saw them drinking and playing music after hours. His patrol that took him past their tent repeatedly. The final entry, dated June 5, 1960, read, "They don't respect the silence of the forest. They don't deserve its peace." Carl called Hayes immediately. They took the journal to the current sheriff, but the legal complications were insurmountable. Thompson was dead. The case was half a century old. The journal, without chain of custody, was inadmissible. In the local paper, a small article appeared: "New evidence suggests possible suspect in 1960 Lakewood killings." Dean Sutter, living under a new name in Arizona, never commented publicly. The mystery of what truly happened that night, why Dean's accounts had been inconsistent, whether he'd witnessed Thompson's attack and been too terrified to name him, or whether multiple parties were involved in ways not yet understood, remained. The case file stayed open, one of dozens of cold cases that continued to haunt the small Oregon community. Carl died in 2015, his last words to Hayes reportedly being, "Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, just remembered." Today, hikers at Lakewood National Park pass a small memorial stone near Campsite 4. Most walk by without noticing the names engraved upon it: Michael Barnes, Lisa Hawkins, Tyler Johnson. Some claim to feel a chill in the air there, even on summer days. Rangers tell new recruits to always check that particular campsite twice during night patrols. And somewhere, an elderly man who was once known as Dean Sutter perhaps still wakes in the night, remembering fragments of a darkness that descended half a century ago, pieces of a puzzle that remains incomplete, a truth that died in the forest along with his friends. The questions linger, like the morning fog that shrouds Lakewood's pines: what really happened in that tent? Why did Dean survive when the others didn't? Was Thompson the killer, or was there another explanation for his suspicious journal? And perhaps most haunting of all, does someone still living hold the final pieces of this tragic mystery? The forest keeps its secrets well. Some say too well.